Yo, here we are.
Thanks for joining us on the Bellwether No podcast. We have a special guest with us tonight. Going to tell us her experiences, everything that she's been through. Her name's Priscilla. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself here in just a second. I want to tell y'all to go ahead and like and share that and, this video and get it out there to as many people as possible. Don't forget to check out the YouTube also. Priscilla, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hello, I just want to say thank you for having me. And what y'all are doing is amazing. And I think it's going to reach a lot of people and help a lot of people as well. My name is Priscilla Fallis. I'm originally from Andrews, Texas. I live in Lubbock, Texas now. And I am a photographer, an artist, personal assistant, and I help out with anything and everything I can for suicide awareness. I lost my husband 2 years ago this month to suicide. His name was Brad. I called him Big. But, so I'd like to share my story. I have a son. He is 20. His name is River.
Alrighty. Wonder, you got anything to say before we get her kicked off on her story or anything?
Yeah, I got one question, and the question from me to you, Priscilla, is with such a traumatic experience, like, what made you want to talk about it? That is my very first question, because I think that's the hardest question for people to answer.
Right.
So what made you want to actually come forward and share your story?
I think that it's time, and it's so close to the holidays, and a lot of suicide attempts and, suicides just in general happen around the holidays, just because there's just so much stress and worry and everything else. And, I really think it needs to be approached. I don't think you need to sugarcoat anything about this subject at all. And I want to help everyone that is sad and who's dealing with all these emotions that they don't know what to do with. And they believe that suicide is the only way out. And that's not right. It's not correct.
Well, I told you, and I'll, let everyone hear it. I told you before we got on, we talked for a few minutes, is what you're doing right now. It takes such a strong person to step up and talk about this stuff. And it is so appreciated, not just because of Wojcik and myself, but there's so many people that probably deal with this stuff that don't have the courage to do this. And hopefully after the podcast today, people are willing to say, hey, I'm strong enough to do this. So you are setting the standard and letting people know it's okay to go ahead and talk about this. So it is appreciated. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the person that you are. And thank you for sharing your story. That's all I want to say until we get into it.
Okay. You want to go ahead and get into your story a little bit?
Sure. Okay. It was a Wednesday. And first off, I would like to, not one thing causes somebody to commit suicide. It's numerous things. It's not one person's fault. It's, there's no fault in anyone. You have guilt for a long, long time. I should have did this, or I should have said this, or I could have done this, or why didn't they ask for help? But that's not always the case. I was given some news on a Wednesday that we were losing our house. And we had 72 hours to vacate, and I had no idea. And, he was at work. I called him. I said, we need to talk about this. Something's wrong here. And he came home, and Brad and I never fought. Our relationship was very sweet, endearing. everything. He was I guess I should talk about who he was. He was a phenomenal man. He was a hunter. He was a fisherman. He worked with wounded soldiers. He took them hunting and fishing and Make-A-Wish. I mean, he wanted everybody around them to be happy. He was an intelligent man as well. And but Brad also liked to drink, and he was a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. For 21 years, he was sober. And, one day he just picked up a drink and just couldn't put it down. He was still functional. I'm not saying anything bad about him. I just want to say that. But I think the alcohol really had probably about 95% of it, I believe, affected his choice, and it is a choice. So, but anyway, yeah, we argued and argued and argued, and I didn't understand why he had kept this from me. It had been about 3 years that he had kept this from me, and I had no idea. And we fought, argued, and I asked him to leave in not the nicest way. It was ugly. We're about to lose our home. So I called my mother and I said, we're fixing to lose our home. My son was in San Angelo going to college. I called him. I said, we have, 72 hours to get out. Well, as the days went on, I still hadn't spoken to him. I was still irate, as anybody would be. I was floored. I just couldn't believe this had happened. Well, he had gone down to the river in Junction, Texas, and he had spent the weekend there. We had a lease there. And I really still hadn't spoken to him. I did ask my dad to call and check on him, make sure he was okay and this and that, but he never answered. And then was Sunday evening, and I got a text from him, and it said, I'm cold. Still upset. I never responded. And Monday morning, I jumped out of bed. My phone was ringing. It was one of my girlfriends, Jennifer, and and I heard the knock at the door, and I saw the 2 officers, and I knew. I just knew. And and I, of course, as that feeling cannot ever be put into words. It was like this wasn't real. This wasn't happening. He's an intelligent man. Why would he do this? And and I just didn't understand. And the next thing I knew, I'm tearing up my room, screaming, yelling, cursing, just I'm not understanding. This isn't happening to me. And it was awful. It was brutal. And there's just, like I said, there's no words to describe that feeling. And then comes guilt. I should have reached out to him. I should have did this. I should have did that. But Brad made a choice. And it was his own choice. He started listening to the dark side and not the good side. And he truly felt like he had no way out. And it was nasty. There's, like I said, there's nothing pretty about this subject at all.
Yeah.
It was ugly. And, my family started gathering around. And I will admit this, yes, I was very medicated. Because, and I don't think, I got a lot of flack for that as well. Because, she's not thinking in her right mind. She's not blah, blah, blah. But if you have not walked in those shoes, then you can't judge that. You just can't. And I had my support system, my team, my tribe is phenomenal. My family. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to make it. you know, and by the grace of God, you know, I'm still going. And, you know, I still have days where I don't want to get out of bed, where I actually think that he's out hunting and he's coming home any minute, you know, and I see the picture in my head, you know, of you know, what he did. And it's horrible. And it makes me so sad that he died with no one, without anyone. And he was so far down in that tunnel, you know, that he really thought it was out.
I don't really have words on that, but yeah, no, I see. I mean, I see where it's coming from.
Death brings out ugly. I mean, it's not anything pretty. I'm not trying to say that, but it brings out the ugly. His family was so dear to my heart, but they turned their backs on me in a split second. They honestly, a lot of people don't know, but they actually thought that I had done this, that he didn't commit suicide. I mean, went as far as calling the Texas Rangers and saying, you know, she did this. She did this. Brad was 17 years older than I was, you know, and in society, you see that and you think, oh, okay, I get it. But it so wasn't that way. And he would have been so mad if he knew the way that they had treated me. I mean, it was horrible. I don't blame them because I know that they're hurting. But to actually say that I did it was the last straw. I had to pray hard.
Well, I think everyone has to cry hard. I mean, I think it suits a soul, honestly. But with that being said, now I got so many different questions. And for the people watching, we try not to talk to the guests and ask questions because we want to just hear it raw and real.
Right.
So how did you, when you found that out that they thought this, how did you handle yourself and how did you move forward? That's huge.
After we, because we still had to pack up our house, I mean, and leave. And thankfully my family came and packed my entire house, our house up in, 2 days, and then dealing with the funeral and whatnot. I believe I moved with my parents to their ranch, and my son actually left college to be with me, and we both needed each other, just like anybody else would. He's a phenomenal young man, and this affected him as much as it affected me. I mean, this man taught him how to hunt, what to say to girls and how to cook. And, and River still to this day will talk about it just a little bit, but not too much, but I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
First off, I want to say it sounds like he was an amazing man from, what you're telling me, with some demons that, that maybe he didn't really talk about much.
No.
Just from what I'm getting.
He kept everything to himself. I never realized that there was a problem. Yes, I knew his drinking got a little bit heavier, but he's in the oil field, and oil goes up, goes down, and that comes with it as well.
Right.
And women don't understand, and wives and moms and whatnot don't understand the pressure that a husband or a father holds on their shoulders. As children, it's instilled in them to not be weak, don't show emotion, don't cry, be the provider, be this, be that, be this, and that's just them, and it's pride. I don't want to let my wife down. I don't want to let my son down. This is.
Wow.
So you said that your son came home from college and to be with you and stuff.
Right.
Did he ever go back and finish or?
No, he's actually working as a cook in Lubbock, and he plans to go to culinary school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool deal.
Yeah.
Cool deal.
And we talk about it, a lot more now. I mean, he's a little bit open to it now, and he says it always feels. River has anxiety, as well as I do, and that's where the PTSD comes in.
Right.
That's scary. I mean, if you've never had that, that can control you, and it's frightening.
Yep.
Even to go to the grocery store or to the gas station, or even to go in the other room in the house. And at first, I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand it. I thought it was part of the grieving. And it is, but I didn't understand why everything was happening so fast and so quickly. And it's because we're searching for the norm, something that we can't go back to, that was stripped from us. So I've learned how to deal with it.
So still to this day, are there certain activities, certain things that you won't, like you refuse to do because it hurts too much, or?
There's, I still have his ashes, and and I plan on this summer going to Del Rio, because that's where he fished a lot, and spreading his ashes. And he also wanted them spread in Colorado on the mountain where they went elk hunting every year. But as far as anything that I won't do, no. I probably did one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do in my life was when Brad took his own life. He was in his white pickup truck, and he was out at Parker Ranch, and that's a ranch outside of Andrews. And he actually texted his boss and said, "I'm not going to come in today." And his boss was upset and was just like, why not? And he said, "At Parker Ranch, I'm done." And his boss came out there and thought, honestly, he thought that he was just drunk. And so Scott walked up to the door of the pickup truck and saw him there, and that's not something that nobody wants to. I mean, that will be in his head forever. And I feel so bad for that, And, but the hardest thing that I had to do was when I left Andrews, my uncle and my father were actually also at the scene. My dad is a retired DPS and sheriff in Dickens, Texas. They called him and, was telling him about it. And he said, "Would you like to come out here?" And my dad went out there also. And my uncle went and got the truck after, the scene was taken care of, and all that stuff to get the truck get cleaned out. But the hardest thing I had to do, and I knew if I did this, that I could do anything in the world. I got in that pickup truck and I drove it to Lubbock with all of my belongings inside, because I knew that if I could do that, then I could do anything. And I was not about to let this destroy me. Yes, I am still sad to this day. Yes, I still scream and yell, but I have to move forward. I have to pick up myself off the floor. I have to pick up my son, and everyone around me that it affected. It didn't just affect my son and my family. It affected my friends, everyone, his coworkers, everyone.
Oh.
Yeah. It's ugly.
No, it is. But you know what? Nobody talks about it afterwards either.
No.
Now, I'm not trying to put your family, your friends, people like, do people ask how you're doing afterwards with something to that magnitude?
Absolutely. They do.
That's
Yes,
good.
I have a small circle, and like I said, my support team, my or if they're not, I couldn't do it without them. I mean,
Sure.
it's still to this day, and I have four very close friends of mine, my angels, and we sit there and we talk and we laugh, we cry, and if I want to cry, they'll sit there. They don't, I mean, without any words, they're crying too because, you know, they hurt as well. And it hurts when you have to tell the little ones. We have a Emmy who's, just, little, and Braden, we have to explain, what happened to Mr. Big. Where did he go? Why did he go? And we're not going to lie to him. And it's so sad to see their little hearts and they don't understand, you know, but that's the way we all are. We don't understand. Everybody wants to know why. And there's not a reason. Brad made a choice, you know.
You know,
Do you ever feel when you look back at the whole situation? Do you ever feel like if you would have just answered a text or something like that, maybe you could have talked him
Every day.
out of it?
Yeah, every day. But when somebody's in that, like I said, that tornado,
Right.
and they're right there, they're gonna do what they're gonna do without telling anyone.
Right.
They're just going to do it. And he said, I'm done. Whether it just be with he was exhausted from working or worry or stress or done. He was just done. And I I'll never understand it. I still get angry as well. And a lot of people won't understand this when I say this, but it's very selfish. He didn't take care of the problem. He left it for everybody else. He left, and that may sound very harsh, but that's the truth. I feel sorry and I pray every day that, every lost soul finds their way out with help, with family, with friends, with anything. But everybody is left to pick up the pieces.
and I,
That's what always got me.
and I thought the same way also. But I've never thought about the aftermath of it because I guess there's no real way to be like dance around the thing. Is your husband, committed suicide? I don't think he thought about the aftermath of what you and your son are going through. Like,
Right.
That's got to be so tough.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think any of them do. I think the very second that, forgive me for being raw, but the second he pulled the trigger and ended everything, I think he was like, shit, I just screwed up, And I would get angry because I'm like, why are we down here suffering so much, trying to breathe and just breathe? And he's up in heaven, rejoicing. That didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand that. But, it's not for us to understand. So it's nasty.
I think it's safe to say that when somebody decides, that they're going to commit suicide, I don't think that they're really thinking about the big picture. I think they're looking at what they got in front of them. Like I said on earlier podcasts, it's just something that I could never bring myself to doing after seeing what my family went through with my cousin's suicide. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't sit there and think to yourself, if I was a weaker man, it'd be really easy to fix this. But it was hard, not only did I have the military experience, that and everything, but after I got out, um, I had 2 kids and I had a divorce. And for the first time, I was, you know, without my kids since
Mm-hmm.
they were born, essentially. Now Cadence was a little older when I finally was around her because she was born when I was in Iraq. But you know, to know that you're coming home without your kids every day, and plus, all the stuff that's on your mind fresh. I mean, I'd be lying if I would sit here and say that it never crossed my mind, not one time. But it always goes back to, I can't do it. I can't put my parents through that. I can't put my sister. I can't put my brother. I can't put my kids. I can't put none of them through that. But I think it's safe to say that most people, when it's time to do that, uh, it just, people don't think about it. And I think if they think too much about it, they'll talk themselves out of it.
Right.
So
I believe that as well. And there after I stayed with my parents for a couple of weeks, and then River and I moved to a little cabin on Buffalo Lake in Lubbock. And I did a lot of soul searching. I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of thinking. I did a lot. And, it got really, really dark. I mean, there was nights where I sat in that rocking chairs on that mountain looking at the lake thinking, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here any longer. And I don't know how many times that, I thought, okay, I can't do this. I cannot do this. My heart cannot literally take anymore, and there was, a couple of nights where I was very close to doing the same thing just because I couldn't handle this, everybody being so sad, myself being sad, and everybody just looking at me, just and I could see their pain, and I know that they could see mine, and it was like I couldn't do it any longer. I didn't want to, but I would sit there and I would think about it and think about it and think, and something would just come over me, and I know it was the grace of God, because without him I wouldn't be here. I would not be here, and I would snap out and think, no, I will not do this to my family. I will not do this to myself. Life is such a precious gift, and this will not break me. This will not break me.
So
I know for me personally, when I get into that dark place,
Yeah.
and I start feeling that way, and when I finally snap out of it, or like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
like, I almost feel like I'm silly for even thinking that in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sitting there like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, you have so much to be thankful for.
Right.
It's kind of like we talked before. I think sometimes it's easy, like when everything's going down around you, it's easy to look at the negative, but you never look at the things that are going, your way.
Mm-hmm.
And, you sit there after it all comes,
Right.
to a plateau and everything's better. You sit there and think, man, I can't believe that thought even entered my head,
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just me personally.
No, I think a lot of people who do that, I mean, the stress in general can take hold of you. I mean, I've developed migraines, and honestly, I lost 95% of my vision just from the stress and the migraines. I remember waking up one morning and I couldn't see my son's face. And I was like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. Look what it's literally killing me little by little by little. And when you can't see that, I mean, that's just another thing that, we take for granted, It was horrible. And, with help with medication and steroids, and I regained my vision, which I'm eternally thankful for.
So I think one of my biggest questions. Oh, I hear my kid. Um, how did your son deal with that? Like, how did you like explain this? How did you? I mean, this is. I think this is so tough. I don't know. Like, how do you even have this conversation?
I believe my mother was the one who actually told him, because he had already been in town, helping us move, and I remember seeing him for a brief moment, and then it was just, it's like when a little kid sees their mother and they're hurt, it becomes 10 times worse, and I saw that, and it was excruciating. It was like somebody had literally ripped my son's heart out. And then that's when the anger started coming in, And when we were together, like on our own at the cabin, we did a lot of talking. I had probably 1,000 sticky notes all over the walls of nothing but positive things. I'm a firm believer in what you say, what you speak into the atmosphere, that's what you're going to get in return. And I could not have any negativity, and he still asks questions, and we talk about it. He's a young adult, and we're able to talk about, um, why do you think he did this, or why do you think he did that, or could we have done this, or could have done that. He's very quiet about it, but he'll get on a kick where he'll talk about it a little bit.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, going through that. But as a parent,
Yeah.
I mean, if that were, say my daughter,
Mhm.
they came to me and said, "Dad, I don't know how to tell my kids what happened." You know, for one, you see your kid in pain.
Yeah.
And then you see your grandkids in pain or whatever. I mean, I can't imagine how hard that would have been on your mom to tell him,
I know
and man, that's pretty rough.
it is. It is.
I mean, I can't imagine the pain that would have to go through that. I mean, Widener, you got daughters. I mean, they're young, but
Yeah.
how would you feel about it?
I don't know. That's why, like, it's so like, I don't know. And just like Priscilla's going through, like, went through, it's like, I don't think that people like rehearse this. We know the right words to say because we
Right.
don't.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Nobody expects this to happen this close to home. You know what I mean?
No.
And that's what's kind of, that's what's sad about the whole thing.
Mhm.
It's just right there in front of your face, and then you're like, "What do I do?" Now,
Exactly.
and Priscilla, it was so close to you. Like,
I look back and I see the signs now. I see, the hidden innuendos that were said, or, his journals. We were both writers. I'm still a writer, and we had journals for years that we shared together, and talked about, this and that and this and that. And that was one things I wanted out of that pickup was his journal, because I knew that there was something in there that said something, because he wasn't going to leave this place without saying something to me, and suicide is planned. It's not a sudden thing. I think that there's people out there that joke and threaten that, you know. I had someone very, very close to me do that for years to me, you know, and then for it to actually happen is beyond.
So that, yeah, I mean, I agree. Like you said at the very beginning, it's a choice. Um,
Yes.
uh, I just, I think what I want to figure out, like, how did you move forward with you and your son? Like, what did you do? Like, how did you keep that going? How did you keep it positive? Because there's no positive way to go, but how did you do that?
I prayed 24/7. I literally was on my hands and knees praying for this to go away, for me to wake up, for, I mean, in art. Uh, River plays music, he plays the guitar, he would, you know, stay on his side of the, you know, our little loft, and he would just play the guitar, and I would, you know, create something. I stuck my headphones were in my ears until I went to bed, you know, and just in prayer. We're learning yoga, and that helps with both of our anxiety, you know, to sit there and to meditate on the positive. We come from a positive. I'm very positive, you know, like I said, and it's every day. You know, people wonder, is, you know, are you in reality? You know, is, you know, all the time you're happy, all the time you're happy, all the time. And if you're happy all the time and you speak positive, you're going to get that back. And, you know, and God's not going to give us more than we can't handle. I mean, and I'm an example of that. I mean, I was on the edge, but it can happen. The mind is such a strong tool. You know, if it can convince someone to actually end their life killing themselves, then it can make you stronger. It can make you happier. You have to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to learn to rebuild yourself every single day.
Now, with you being a writer and an artist, when you look back at some of your earlier work, you know, like after this experience that you went through, do sometimes you look into it and think, man, I was in a dark place when I did this one? Or...
Yes. And yes, it was ugly. It was ugly. And it's, you know, I still try to protect people around me. So I don't want people to see those things. But yes, I can tell a difference in what I was doing. I know exactly, I can look at a place and know exactly where I was.
Right.
And where I was. But it's good therapy.
Yeah.
Music was also a big help.
I mean, I think a lot of people that write music and you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of music, and I know Widener is too. And you know, I think that some of our favorite songs and favorite people that do music have had some kind of pain in their life to make the songs that we enjoy. And you know, I mean, to us it's entertainment. For them it could have been,
it's real life.
Like it's real life. You know, it could be a traumatic experience. You know, it's kind of like we were talking about that, you know, that song by Hayes Carl that, you know, talking about the Christmas with the family and ended up with just his mom. You know, to us it's an entertaining story and it's a good song, you know, and stuff like that. But you know, every time he performs that song, you wonder if he goes through, you know, some kind of a depression, you know, just singing it, knowing that that's how his family turned out.
Yeah.
So,
and you know that happiest people can be the saddest people.
100%.
Look at
That is
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I
Robin
mean,
Williams.
and I believe Jim Carrey struggled with depression as well. There's there's a lot, and I read somewhere the other day that one of the highest statistics of suicide is males in their late 40s, early 50s, white men that commit suicide.
Well, things quit working, and
Yeah,
I mean,
you know,
there's a lot of
job.
stress. You
Right.
know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I stay pretty stressed myself. Not counting all the stuff that I've been through, but with my job, I stay stressed out, especially at the position that they have me at. I mean, it's just one of those things. Every day when I go to work, I'm thankful that I get to clock in because, being a father, being a dad and stuff like that, you don't want to let nobody down, your kids or whatever.
Right.
All it takes for them to come in and say, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. And then what do?
Yeah. And I think that's where communication comes in. I think, people like to communicate, but they don't really say, brutal truth. It was, and it's hard for men to ask for help. I can't imagine being a man and having to tell my wife, we're about to lose our house. I am like, this far in debt. A man, doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to let anybody down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know for me, like, I've been in relationships in the past where, like, I would put myself in a financial bind to try to make my significant other happy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and Widener talks about it all the time. Keeping up with the Joneses. But I'm to a point in my life where is no longer like that. I feel that if you're in a relationship, it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. You work your ass off, they work their ass off. You have a common goal at the end.
Yeah.
But with all that, I mean, one thing go wrong, like you have this perfect planned out future for you, and say something, gets in the way of that, like a doctor bill or whatever gets in the way of that, or a habit or something, and you get off course of that, I mean, so much things can go wrong. I mean, especially if you start, drinking real heavily. I mean, you could lose your job, then you're really not going to get any, not going to be anywhere. You lose your job, you could lose your, your house in your situation. You could lose your loved one. You could lose your kids. I mean, man, there's just so much that could go wrong with it. But you don't think of that when you make, these plans or this goal. You don't think of anything getting in the way of it.
Right.
And I mean, as a man, I think Widener will tell you too, with him being a dad and a husband and a provider and stuff, there's nothing worse than, like, for me, it would always kill me when I'm sitting here doing everything I can to provide for my family. And, me and my ex-wife, we had a problem with this at first. I wanted her to stay home, take care of the kids, because that's what, that's what society tells us that we should do, And I did everything I could to put us in the best position, to help with our family. But the day that she came to me and said that she wanted to go back to work, like, it really hurt me as a man, because I felt like I wasn't giving her the life that she wanted or deserved. And I couldn't do that with what I was making. And, when she went back to work, I think a lot of that, started a lot of the issues that we had. But, it's hard to swallow, and I mean, those were some of my most stressful times, but at the end of the day, I could kiss my girls goodnight and tell,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I mean, hey, no offense to her, I don't want her back, but I want my kids back.
Right.
I want that life back with my kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, she'll probably tell you the same thing.
Yeah. It's stressful. I mean, to impress, and I come from a town where that's what it's about. I love my town, my hometown, but you're judged at a drop of a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. It's that way everywhere, I'm sure. But that's where I was born and raised, But
I worked and lived in
yeah.
Andrews. It was really hard for me at first because I wasn't from there.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, they have little cliques,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I seemed to fit right through the cracks of all of the little cliques that there were. But, just being in that town alone will add extra stress to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard. I mean, I worked at the paper for 10 years and, I was involved in the chamber and I loved being involved in all that stuff I did. And I have really good friends and family still there. But, I look at it now and I feel so good in Lubbock because I can go anywhere and nobody's going to judge me for, my tattoos or because I'm wearing weird clothes or whatever. And it's sad. And that also puts, a lot on your shoulders, like I said earlier, keeping up with the Joneses, who's driving this car, who's driving that car. And that puts a lot of pressure on parents, and they teach that to their children and then they continue on with that and they teach their children that.
We create little monsters.
Yeah. And life's not, yes, we're all blessed. Just, we have families, we have homes, and there's just so much more out there than what. Yeah. I hope that, if somebody is struggling with something, it doesn't matter what it is, the smallest problem can be the biggest problem to somebody else, and I see that a lot in the schools with bullying and, picking on people. You never know what that person's going through. Anybody, any stranger that you come across, you don't know, so I've taught my son from day one to be nice, to be a gentleman, to say nice things to people. If somebody looks nice, tell them they look nice, because if they're having a bad day and something positive comes out of your mouth, it could change their world. They could have been thinking, I'm going to kill myself tonight. But hey, there is something to look forward to.
I just don't know.
I'll leave y'all speechless.
I think for the first time that me and Widener have nothing to say.
No, I'm just like, I get it. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
It's amazing though. What the hell can we say about this? People need to talk.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. And if it, a little appreciation can go a long ways when your wife walks in the door or your husband walks in the door. It doesn't have to be like this grand gesture, but just a little appreciation goes a long ways.
Sure.
I appreciate what you're doing for our family,
I think in general, just I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
As a friend, like, yeah, and you coming on, like, I appreciate you for sharing your story. Just, I appreciate you to anyone. That can change their whole perspective on the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It
Because
makes, I mean,
weird place where no one wants to say, "Hey, you're cool," and like whatever.
We'll see. We'll see. Kind of going back to everything. We kind of spoke about it before on the podcast. You know, during the funeral and stuff like that, we talked about how you have people come up to you and they will tell you, like, I'm here if you need me, I'm here if you need me, whatever. Now, of course, you're going to have those that are there if you need them, but doesn't it feel like people just tell you that, because they don't know what else to say?
Yes. I think that has I think like when I walk into a room, I can pretty much tell what you're thinking. Like if you know my story, I know that you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, what do you say? Do you bring him up? Do you say how are you doing? Whatnot?" And that's okay. So I usually, will say, "Well, remember when Big did this or did that or did this?" And I tell them it's okay to talk about him. That's how you continue coping and getting better, with everything. And I did, I protected myself, at the very beginning when my son and I were, living on our own in that little cabin. I even found myself pushing myself away from people, including my son, because I thought, if this man that said that he loved me can hurt me like this, then I don't want anybody around me.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Is it hard to trust people?
Absolutely.
In general,
Yes.
regardless of what kind of relationship you have with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the man that,
Yeah.
promised to love you forever,
Mm-hmm.
and he can inflict that much pain on you
Mm-hmm.
at one time. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't help but think that it'd be hard to trust anybody.
It is. It is.
I mean, it would be hard to trust. I mean,
Yeah.
I could see where that would be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and it is, and I'm working on that little by little, but my friends and family worry about me because, I'll trust anybody who says anything. I mean, it gets me into trouble sometimes, but I have to understand that the world isn't nice and made of rainbows and butterflies,
Nope.
And I've always thought that. I'm not, being naive or anything, but because I want to see the good out of people, but there are ugly people around who are gonna do things to you. And the trust thing is just, I'm very cautious. If something arises, I pray about it and trust my instincts because they never lie.
Well, with trust, with no trust, you have nothing anyway.
Right.
Regardless if it's a work relationship or anything.
True.
Like with Widener, I was in for a little bit before I ever met him, and from day one, I kind of took Widener, and there was a couple of them that came in about the same time. I took that whole group kind of under my wing and showed them some bad habits, but also had some fun. But there was never a time that they had to trust my loyalty to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the same for them. I've never had to trust had to second guess, will Widener be there for me if I need it?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I can say about that little group we had. We were all so different. Here comes this Cali boy hanging out with a Texas boy. It was kind of weird, but I always had his back and he always had mine, It did. But, that kind of goes to but if he were to do something, to betray that trust, it would be hard to, get past it.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
in the same way, if I did something to betray his trust, I think it would be something hard for him to get past.
Right.
I mean, but I know with us, with our friend, or, our brother in arms, when we got the news for it, I tell people all the time, like, we sat on the phone probably for 15 minutes and didn't say a word.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know what to say. I didn't, because I hadn't fully processed it. Poor Widener, he went to the funeral with some of them that we deployed with, and I didn't get to make the funeral, but I saw some pictures. I saw and me and Widener talked about it and stuff, and I mean, he was our brother through and through. Even still today. I mean, there's things that he's taught me or told me that I still every once in a while will pop into my head, and I'll get to laughing or something, because he was pretty comical when he wanted to be.
When he wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think you have to look at that positive.
Yeah.
I mean, the good times are going to get you through the bad times.
Right.
Yeah. So, without actually thinking about it, I never thought about this, Priscilla, until Wadzek brought it up, is how do people deal with it afterwards? And you're dealing with it with yourself and your son, and then with Hill, he left a whole tribe of Navajos behind him that had to deal with it. And I never thought of that aftermath of it. So that's kind of what got me. And then when I went to, Berry Hill and stuff like that, I just never thought about that. And how do people move on from that? And it blows my mind. Like, it blows my mind that people can actually step up and still go and be that positive. Because people think about the suicide, but people never think about what happens afterwards.
Absolutely. I mean, picking up the pieces, and I have to praise my son, the numerous times that he saw me crying, and I automatically would stop, and he would look at me and say, no, you have to let it out, you have to release it, because I didn't want him to see me in that ugly state. Sure. I didn't want that. I mean, you're automatically supposed to protect your child, and I didn't want him to, but there was times where I just couldn't. He caught me beating up Brad's truck with a metal pipe, just because I was just so angry, and throwing rocks at it, because I had to. There had to be an outlet somewhere, and it's horrible for your friends to walk in, and you're sitting in the bed and you're just in this fog daze, and they're like, that's not Prissy, that's not her, where is she? And I was just zoned out. It was just like I literally had bruises on my arms from pinching myself, because is this really happening? Did he really die? Did he really pull that trigger and kill himself? It was just, and even today, and, numerous nights of just nightmares of just, and that scene, I never saw it, or I didn't see any of that, but being a writer, your mind is automatically, tuned in to that, and so I see all these different scenarios of, what it would, and you can get sucked into that so easily, but you have to bring yourself out, no matter what. And in those times, River would peek around the corner, it would pop me out, or My mother would call, how are you doing? And, mothers just have.
Do you think this incident brought you, your son, and your mom and dad closer together?
Absolutely. Yes. Brad and my dad were actually best friends. My dad would come every Monday and hang out, and because he worked over, different areas around Andrews. So when he would come, they were like, sitting on the back porch, and it was like I wasn't even there, and it affected my dad a lot. I mean, we talk about it on the ranch, you know, where's he at? Or, he's missing out, or why, and my dad has guilt as well. I could have said this, I could have said that. And that's where I have to say, Daddy, like you told me, he made a choice, and I'm not saying that something, we could have said something, but I believe that this has been planned for a very long time, a long time, and it's really difficult for my mother to even speak about to this day, because, this man that adored her and put her on her pedestal, broke her baby girl's heart, and when she's ready, she will, talk about it. But, and as much as his family, as much as they did to me and hurt me, I still pray for them. I still wish them the best. I wish I could hug them and love them. But sometimes you have to love people from far away, and I hope that they're healing, because everybody deserves to heal after something like this has happened.
100%. Wow.
Did I talk too much?
No, you got it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not at all. I don't know. I'm just thankful that you were able to come on the show and talk to people and tell your story like this, because there's somebody out there that needed to hear this story.
Absolutely.
I know before you came on, you told your friends, to come check you out, pray for you and all that. And, man, I hope that your friends are watching this. They'll kind of keep a closer eye on the page and kind of see some of the other stuff we're doing, because you just never know who that one person. I mean, I shared a message with with Widener this week that came from the guy I used to work with. And I asked him if he checked out the podcast. He goes, man, it's real talk, but it's what people need to hear.
Absolutely.
And, it's rough to be put in these situations. I know with Widener, and I know with him, we've said from day one, this is for anybody. This is for anybody that needs it. With you being on the show helps out a lot, because, we've had a law enforcement officer on here. We've had a veteran, a female veteran. Now that we have a civilian that has no ties to the actual military. Now, your dad being a, police officer, or, sheriff's deputy or whatever, or sheriff or whatever. I mean, like, you have a little bit of tie there, but the actual story itself came from civilians. I think that's huge, and it shows that we're here for everybody.
Yes.
I mean, the reason why we have to go down that road so many times is because that's what we know. We don't know this side of it.
Yep.
And for you to come on and have, for lack of better words, you had the balls to come on and tell your story. I mean, it's huge. It really is. And I'm blown away with the story. I mean, I didn't know the whole story. I knew some of it. But, when you sit down and you really think about what all you've been through, and tell you honestly, I've seen you a few times, met you a couple times or whatever, talked to you. I've never seen you without a smile on your face, and that's huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really huge, from where you come from, and I mean, I'm proud of you,
Thank you.
for coming on and telling the story, and I appreciate it. And man, I'm so thankful that somebody will get to hear this, and somebody might be able to look at it and say, you know what, I never looked at it that way. Maybe I need to rethink what I'm doing, or people watching this, might be seeing the same signs from their loved ones, and this might make them speak up and say, you know what, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I love you. I don't want you to go,
Yeah.
So it's huge.
And,
it's huge.
When I go and visit, old friends and, the couples, all of them are married except for a little small portion of us. But, I'll leave a sticky note, be grateful for your family.
Yes.
Or, kiss your husband. Brad was very, very good at the love notes and the sweetness and the positivity. I mean, he helped me rebuild myself, a lot, my self-esteem. And I think that's, why I want everybody else around me. I want them to feel special. I want them to be happy, because I know how it feels to be on the ground hurt. And I hope I helped.
Oh, you did. There's not a lot of times that I'm speechless, but yeah, you did. My last question to you is, what would you say to people that don't know how to talk about things like this? Like, what would you say? Like, hey, like, it's okay to talk about, like, how would you say that?
Like their problems and
yeah, in general.
Just in general, I think that the more you talk about your feelings, the more like if a man needs help, I think that's it shows more of a man and a woman to say, yes, I do need help. Or, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. If it's, anything, it doesn't matter if it's moving a kitchen table, or if it's, my girlfriend broke up with me, can I think that to be positive is contagious. To be happy is contagious. And you have to live your best life, because this is all we got until we get to heaven. Make life what you want it. Only you can do it. No one can do it for you.
But don't be afraid to talk either.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with the feelings. I know it's not manly and all that, but
yeah. So my last question of the night is, coming on here, talking about it, getting your story out there. Did it help you in any way?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
It did. There are people out there that know, bits and pieces of it, but, I protected a lot of people from seeing the ugly,
right.
But I'm not doing just like Brad. He protected me. He thought he was protecting me by not telling me, but he was hurting me.
Right. Right. Crippling.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But in a way, he was also preparing me for this,
right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
people need to see the ugly, the disgusting, the tears, the ugly.
100%. 100%. Yep.
So
All right.
I think y'all are doing an amazing job, and I think this is going to go
Thank you.
very, very far.
Thank
I
you.
really do.
It's amazing what a couple of drunk veterans can think of on the phone together. I remember when I told him we're going to do the
one
podcast,
person.
he goes, I need to talk to my wife.
Just to help one person. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
So
And
Absolutely.
that was what we were saying from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, just want to help that one person.
Yeah.
I do want to say I'm thankful for the both of you, to meeting you and Gary and my family and my friends and all the support.
Absolutely.
We don't do this.
There, and we appreciate that. And it's not easy.
No.
We're mainly here for people like you that have a story that need to be told.
Yeah.
Get it out there to help somebody else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, Widener said before, if this was about us, we could sit here and tell combat stories all night long.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably be pretty entertaining, especially about after the fifth whiskey. But,
Your moonshine?
But it wouldn't be a podcast. It would just be one long ass movie, and then we wouldn't have nothing else to talk about. But me and him, we could talk about anything. So I couldn't think of anybody better to do the podcast with than him. But I really think, what people don't understand when I tell them about the podcast, and I tried to, push it. I don't think people realize that the podcast isn't for me. It's not. We're trying to get it out there for other people.
Yeah.
And I mean, it may not be your thing, but if you share it, somebody on your page might
Yeah, absolutely.
Might help. So we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
If you ever decide you want to come back on and talk about anything else, get a hold of us and we'll try to make it happen.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see what the next one holds too. This was huge.
This was huge. This was a milestone.
Yeah. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.